I never received it. That was all I said. One sentence, 4 words, spoken just loud enough to cut through the clinking champagne flutes and the loud music blasting from the rooftop speakers. Our chief executive officer, Julian Thorne, a man who uses too much hair gel and too few ethics, had just raised his glass to me, or more precisely, to my full first name, which he only uses when he is pretending to know his employees. To Harvey, he beamed, looking out at the crowd like a pageant host. He hit every milestone this quarter and earned himself that fat $28,000 performance bonus. Cheers, applause followed. Laughter. I even heard someone from sales yell, "Buy us all a drink, Harvey." I did not laugh. I did not raise my glass. I just looked up at Julian from across the terrace, met his gaze, and said those 4 words. I never received it, and that was when the party died. It did not collapse. It bled out slowly in silence. The chief financial officer, Bradley Ross, who always smells like old money and mints, twitched hard enough to almost spill his drink. The human resources director, Brenda Finch, started coughing into her napkin like she had suddenly forgotten how to swallow her drink. Even the intern manning the dessert table stopped slicing cheesecake and stared. Julian, to his credit, did not flinch. He just chuckled that fake, airy laugh he uses when investors ask about overdue reports. Always modest, Harvey. Well, it is in the system. Payroll must have processed it already. I blinked once. I checked the account this morning. Nothing has been deposited. Brenda made a noise halfway between a laugh and a gasp. I will have finance look into it first thing Monday, Julian said, his voice a little too bright. Now enjoy the night. You deserve to celebrate. I am sure I do, I said. I just want to know what I am celebrating. And with that, I set my glass down, still full, and walked off the rooftop. I left Julian standing there like a balloon with the air leaking out. He kept smiling, but you could see the edges starting to crack. I did not cry in the elevator. I did not scream into my steering wheel or fire off an angry email on the drive home. I just drove home, made myself a cup of black coffee, and opened my laptop. Then, I started pulling the files because here is the thing. I was not confused. I was not even shocked. I was prepared. 4 years ago, I asked for a copy of my original employment contract. I saved it in a folder, titled "In Case They Get Stupid." That folder had 34 other documents in it. Vendor invoices I had flagged, internal memos I was not supposed to see, and a spreadsheet showing budget reallocations that just happened to divert $28,000 from my department to miscellaneous development approved by Julian himself. I could have laughed if I were not so utterly done. See, I did not get where I am by being loud. I am 58 years old, and I have spent nearly 12 years building the operational infrastructure of this firm. I am not the one who bangs on tables or leads motivational cheers. I am the one who fixes quietly, efficiently, and without drama. And when people like Julian forget that quiet does not mean powerless, well, that is when things start to break. I sent one email before I went to bed. Just one. No attachments, no long explanations, just the subject line, Clause 9.3, Notice of Invocation. I wrote that clause myself 4 years ago. I slipped it into my contract after watching too many people get handshakes and handouts for projects I delivered. The Human Resources Department never read it. The legal department skimmed. Julian signed it during a budget crisis while eating takeout on a video call. Clause 9.3 states that failure to disperse performance bonus within 8 calendar days of confirmed milestone completion entitles the employee to initiate proprietary protection protocols without further notice. They had all forgotten about it. I had not. And now I had just flipped the first domino. My drive home that night was peaceful. The city streets were quiet, the traffic lights blinking in a slow, rhythmic pattern that matched my heartbeat. I knew what would happen next. I had watched Julian and his inner circle operate for years. They believed that employees were interchangeable cogs, easily manipulated with hollow praise and empty promises. They did not understand that the systems keeping their company alive were not built by executive decrees, but by the meticulous work of engineers and architects who documented every line of code. By the time I closed my laptop and turned off the lights, I felt a sense of calm. The chessboard was set, the first move was made, and the clock was ticking. Monday morning smelled like panic and burnt coffee. Not that anyone would admit it. On the surface, the office was its usual beige purgatory. People walked briskly, phones rang with exaggerated urgency, and someone down the hall kept pretending to laugh at something on their computer. But beneath the fluorescent hum, something had shifted. I could feel it. By 9:25 a.m., Brenda Finch from Human Resources had already stopped by my desk twice under the guise of just checking in. Her blouse looked wrinkled, and she looked like she had not slept. "Hey, Harvey," she said, her voice too cheerful. "So weird about the bonus things. Probably just payroll being slow, right?" I did not even bother looking up from my screen. "Sure," I said. "Probably at 10:15 a.m. I got the email I had been anticipating. The subject line read, 'Contract Review Follow-Up, Urgent,' from Victoria Croft, our lead counsel. She asked me to join a legal review meeting at 10:45 a.m. sharp in the small conference room. Just her and me. No need to bring anything," the email said. So of course I brought everything. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and fear. Victoria was already seated when I arrived, fingers pressed together like she was trying to physically hold her thoughts in place. She did not offer me coffee. She did not smile. She gestured to the chair across from her like I was there to discuss a legal offense. She held a printed copy of my contract in her lap, one pink paper marker showing page 7. I sat down, set my leather folder on the table, and waited. Victoria cleared her throat. "Harvey, have you ever exercised Clause 9.3 before?" "No," I said, "but the clause is valid. It is signed, countersigned, and timestamped in the repository. You can find the backup under document #Vance 93. She blinked, I continued. "It was added as a condition of continued employment during the 2021 second quarter restructuring. I wrote it myself, ran it past outside counsel, and sent it to legal for incorporation. Julian approved it over lunch on November 18th. He said it sounded standard." Victoria looked down again, flipping to the marked page. She read the clause aloud slowly, like each word was a warning she had ignored. Clause 9.3. Failure to disperse performance bonus within 8 calendar days of confirmed milestone completion entitles the employee to initiate proprietary protection protocols without further notice. Her voice thinned as she got to the end. She looked up at me, her face pale. "You are saying you invoked this yesterday?" "I am," I replied, "and those protocols," she hesitated, "they are not just symbolic, are they?" "They are layered," I said calmly. "Encryption, access restrictions, decoupling of process integrations, and auto-expiry triggers. Nothing irreversible yet." Her pen slipped slightly from her fingers onto the table. I nodded toward my folder. "The proprietary framework is protected under individual authorship until the bonus is legally fulfilled. Per page 10 of the clause addendum, you will find it notarized." She stared at me for a long moment, no longer trying to hide the tremble in her jaw. "Julian said he mentioned the bonus at the party to be gracious," she said. "He assumed it had been paid. It had not," I said. "I checked with my bank, I spoke to payroll, and I reviewed every deposit since October. My bonus is not there." She stood up and walked over to the conference phone, dialing an internal line. "Get Julian in here now." We sat in silence for 4 minutes. I could hear the clock tick. The air conditioning hummed. Victoria's breathing picked up speed. Julian burst in like he was crashing a party, out of breath and holding a protein shake. "What is the emergency?" he asked. Victoria stood and handed him the contract. No pleasantries, no preamble, just, "You signed this, you activated this." He flipped pages with that same performative gusto he uses at shareholder meetings. Then he stopped. He read the clause, blinked, and looked up at me. "Wait, this is real?" "Very real," I said. "I thought it was like a negotiation line," Julian muttered, his jaw clenched. "So what? You are locking down our systems over a bonus?" Victoria cut him off before I could. "No, Julian. He is legally authorized to initiate protective actions on the proprietary framework he authored. That includes the logistics database." Julian's face drained of color. "You are telling me," he said slowly, "we could lose access to the shipping systems?" "No," I replied. "You have already lost them." Access was time-limited. The protocols kicked in at midnight. Julian looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Victoria just stared down at the table. "I will fix it," Julian muttered. "I will call payroll. We will push it through." "That would constitute retroactive coercion," I said evenly. Clause 9.3 defines any bonus payment post-invocation as bribery to reverse a protective protocol. That language is very specific. He turned to Victoria. "This cannot hold up." She did not answer because she knew it would. Julian spent the rest of that meeting doing what overconfident men do best, bluffing with the desperation of someone realizing the chips were not in his stack. First came denial dressed up as concern, then came delay wrapped in false charm. I had seen it before. I had lived it for the better part of a decade at this company. But this time, I was not the quiet fixer behind the curtain. I was the one holding the rope, and Julian had just stepped into the noose. It has to be a payroll glitch, he said, pacing now. I will get Bradley on it. He has probably already flagged it. Would you like me to forward the screenshots? I asked. My voice was calm, with no bite. Just offering facts. Julian blinked. Screenshots? I opened my folder and slid a single printed sheet across the table. It was the transaction history from my bank, highlighted and annotated. Underneath it was an internal log from our own accounting software. Checked and verified, I said. All bonuses for fourth quarter performance were issued as of the 15th per schedule. Mine was not. Victoria leaned in to examine the paperwork, her mouth a tight line. Julian did not look. He just turned to the door. This does not make sense, he muttered. You are telling me the system skipped you? No, I said. I am telling you someone did silence. Victoria finally spoke. We need to verify these against finance records. Harvey, we appreciate your cooperation in the meantime. I nodded once, of course. To keep everything above board, I have submitted a written invocation of Clause 9.3 to Human Resources, timestamped and delivered via internal and external channels. A copy is attached to that same folder. Julian's eyes widened just slightly at that. He knew what that meant. A verbal warning is one thing, but a formal invocation is a legal warhead. I think we are escalating too quickly here, Brenda Finch from Human Resources said later that afternoon when she called me into her office. She had the soft, frantic tone of someone trying to tape over a pipe leak. There is probably just a mistake somewhere. Maybe the approval got stuck. You know how Bradley's team is. I gave her a thin smile. Sure, but for a bonus that size, and considering how it was announced publicly, I figured I would be proactive. Well, she said, fidgeting with a stress ball, we will look into it. Just give us some time. I have documented everything, I said, and I would rather not delay corrective action. I assume the company feels the same. She did not answer, just nodded and gestured vaguely at her screen. But here is the part they did not understand. My calm was not compliance, it was calculation. Because while legal stalled, Human Resources bluffed, and Julian paced around, I was already 10 steps ahead. My logs were more than financial. I had built a full internal tracker for every milestone, bonus approval, and resource allocation since I joined. Not because I did not trust them, but because I did. I trusted them to forget. I trusted them to cover for each other. I trusted them to reroute funds when they thought no one was watching. Buried in those logs under a seemingly boring column labeled authorization trail was something I knew they had not counted on. A pattern, 3 identical authorizations, 3 redirected payments, same coded memo tag, benefit project realignment. One of them was mine. The other 2 went to executives who had not even met their deliverables. Ghost bonuses. I did not mention it yet. Timing was everything. Let the rot rise to the surface on its own like it always does. To make sure my data was clean, I spent that evening running a secondary verification script. My custom milestone engine used cryptographically signed logs, meaning every time Bradley Ross approved an allocation, it left an immutable digital fingerprint. He could delete the spreadsheet rows on his local drive, but he could not touch the server logs where the automated approvals were cached. This security mechanism was something I had quietly deployed 3 years ago during the database modernization project. I kept these logs on a private virtual server that only I could access. When I cross-referenced the entries, the numbers aligned perfectly. The funds meant for my bonus had been shifted into a separate administrative pool within 48 hours of my milestone sign-off. The trail was completely cold for payroll, but for my tracking engine, it was as clear as daylight. That afternoon, I went back to my desk and pulled up the encrypted vault where I kept my audit files. I flagged 3 of them. I added a red marker to the one labeled fourth quarter variance. I flagged entries above $10,000. Then I reopened my private project logs and made a single entry. Delay tactic confirmed. Legal not unified. Human Resources stalling. 72-hour countdown. Then I did something Julian would never have expected. I made myself a cup of tea, logged out of my email, and went home exactly at 5:15 p.m. because I did not need to chase anyone. I had already set the fuse. All they had to do was keep lying long enough for it to burn down everything around them. By Wednesday morning, the office smelled like secrets. No one knew what was happening exactly, but everyone knew something was. Julian stopped strutting. Victoria stopped smiling. Bradley Ross from finance suddenly started avoiding elevators with other humans in them. Even Brenda Finch, who usually chirped out greetings, was glued to her inbox, nodding furiously at whatever crisis call she was pretending to control. I did not say much. I did not need to speak. While they were scrambling to reconcile discrepancies, I was already deep into what I now considered Phase 2, the quiet audit. For the past 4 years, I had kept a second system. It was not company-sanctioned, not cloud-backed, but an encrypted air-gapped external drive I jokingly referred to as my insurance policy. Not because I was paranoid, but because I was experienced. I had watched too many colleagues get blamed for budget oversights that were not theirs. My system did not just track bonuses. It tracked movements, financial, procedural, and personnel-based. The file structures were dry, sure, labeled by quarter and initiative, but once you opened them, it was like staring into the plumbing of a very corrupt building. And now, combing through fourth quarter logs, I saw exactly what I suspected. 3 executive-level bonuses, all authorized on the same date, all tagged under reallocated discretionary funds, all sourced from departments that had reported unclaimed performance incentives. The numbers matched the missing disbursements, mine included. One of them was a $35,000 payout to Bradley Ross, neatly approved and signed off by Julian. The memo line read, "Strategic retention." Another was a $42,000 payout to another vice president. And there was one more thing, a name I did not recognize. A payout tagged retention bonus to a consultant named Terrence Henderson. There was no employee identification number, no tax documentation, and no performance log. Just a wire transfer to an out-of-state account. I checked our contractor directory. No Henderson. I checked payroll. Nothing. Then I checked our new hire and separation logs. That was when my stomach clenched. Bradley had a template for onboarding ghost employees. Normally, these were temporary and monitored, but someone had copied that template and used it to create an entire personnel record, enough to justify a $55,000 contractor disbursement. The signature on the authorization belonged to Bradley Ross. I was not a whistleblower by nature. I did not enjoy corporate takedowns, but I believed in balance. Watching these men loot our company while gaslighting me over a $28,000 bonus was my line. I did not need to go to the press. I just needed to pull one very specific thread. At 3:15 p.m., I used my personal laptop in a public cafe behind a private network. I crafted a short, motionless message to the board's internal audit committee. Subject: possible unauthorized executive disbursements. The body listed 3 fourth-quarter bonuses approved outside of performance parameters, including one linked to a ghost employee profile. Keywords: Henderson, reallocated discretionary project realignment. No name, no threat, just enough breadcrumbs to force their hand. By the time I got back to the office, the pressure was changing. Conversation stopped when I walked past. Julian passed me in the hallway and gave me a smile so forced, it looked like it had been stapled to his face. "Everything all right, Harvey?" he asked. "Everything is in motion," I said. That night, I backed up my audit logs again. I stored one copy in a safety deposit box under my brother Thomas Vance's name. I mailed another to my attorney. I kept the third in my desk drawer. Things were about to get loud, and I wanted to be the only one holding earplugs. On Thursday morning, I noticed Victoria Croft walking down the hallway. She looked exhausted, her normal polished exterior showing small signs of strain. When she saw me, she hesitated, then motioned for me to follow her into her office. Once the door was closed, she turned to me. "Harvey," she said, her voice quiet, "I have been looking at the documentation you provided. The implications are severe. If these files are accurate, we are looking at significant compliance failures." I looked at her, my expression neutral. "They are accurate, Victoria. Every document is verified." She sighed, rubbing temples. "I will need to present this to the board's audit committee." I nodded. "That is the correct course of action," I replied. I left her office knowing that the corporate armor was cracking. By Thursday afternoon, the internal pressure cooker was reaching its limit. I could hear whispers in the break room about external investigators looking into our transactional ledgers. Several members of the accounting team were seen carrying boxes of physical archives to the legal archives room. Even Julian had stopped making eye contact in the corridors, walking with a tight, hurried stride that suggested he was trying to outrun his own shadow. The systems were still functional for now, but the countdown to the automated midnight lockout was looming. I sat at my desk, watching the logs update in real time. The database synchronization processes were humming along, completely oblivious to the fact that their access credentials would expire in a matter of hours. I had spent years of my life creating this operational core, and seeing it function so perfectly only highlighted the absolute foolishness of the executives who thought they could steal from the person who built it. By Friday morning, Julian's kingdom smelled like a funeral no one wanted to attend. The whispers started in the elevator. "Did you hear about the audit? They are saying someone found payout files that do not match the books. Legal has been in meetings all week." Julian had gone from peacocking to pacing. He was suddenly too busy for team check-ins, ducking into Victoria's hallway like a raccoon sniffing for exits. His eyes were red-rimmed from stress. I passed him once in the hallway, and he gave me a crooked smile. I did not smile back because now silence was leverage. Brenda Finch sent me a formal email acknowledging a clerical oversight, affirming my performance and offering to immediately issue a wire transfer of $28,000. I forwarded it to Victoria Croft. Then I replied politely, per clause 9.3, any post-invocation attempt to issue funds without full admission of contractual breach and compensation per terms may be considered retroactive bribery. I must decline. As Julian scrambled, board member Howard Gable requested a confidential 20-minute virtual catch-up. Howard was sharp and famously unemotional. I joined the call from home. "You look calm, Harvey," he said. "I am," I replied. "You have always been a chess player," he noted. "Do you want to talk before this becomes public?" The board knew. Victoria had handed off that folder quietly. The panic had trickled up. "I have said all I need to," I said. "The documentation is thorough." "We have reviewed it," he said. "But I want to understand your terms. What happens if this goes wide?" "I file a provisional complaint with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I issue a licensing restriction notice for proprietary processes under clause protection, and I formally remove myself from all active operational systems." He nodded. "Julian has no idea, does he?" "I think he suspects," I said. "Are you looking to replace him?" "No," I said. "I am looking to remove him." Howard ended the call with a curt nod. "You will be contacted by the audit committee directly," he said. That night, Julian tried to corner me in the parking garage. "Hey," he said too loud. "Look, this whole thing has gone sideways. Let us just settle this quietly. You will get your bonus, and I will throw in a signing retainer." I looked at him. "The moment has passed, Julian," I said. I started the engine and shut the door, leaving him standing there. Friday night dragged its feet. By 6:45 p.m., the building was empty. The clause triggered at midnight 5 days earlier, giving them until midnight tonight to correct the breach. They thought it was a bluff. At 8:35 p.m., human resource override request was blocked by Victoria in 10 minutes. At 9:45 p.m., someone inside finance cracked. An email thread was forwarded to Victoria. It showed Julian instructing Bradley directly, "Move Vance's bonus to training budget. We can compensate him later. Keep it fluid for Aspen." And there was the line that mattered: "His bonus covers the last villa. I will handle Harvey if he asks." It was timestamped 2 days after I hit my final milestone. At 10:22 p.m., Victoria sent it to the board. At 11:20 p.m., Julian finally cracked. He came pounding down the hallway, tie loose, eyes wild. "Harvey," he barked, "you could have come to me first. We could have worked this out." "I did," I said. "You just did not listen. You are really going to burn all this down over a bonus?" "No." I said, "You did that when you stole it." At midnight, the lockout executed automatically. Every operational database I had authored, every automated process, every embedded shipping protocol now required a licensing key to access. They did not have it. The boardroom at 9:30 a.m. Saturday morning was quiet. 14 chairs were filled with 3 empty. I sat at the far end. Next to me sat an external compliance auditor. Julian was absent. Bradley Ross looked like he had aged a decade, his tie the color of defeat, while Brenda Finch sat frozen. Victoria opened the meeting. Clause 9.3 was drafted into Mr. Vance's contract in 2021, she said. The breach is confirmed. The protocols have executed. The operation's backbone is watermarked. Every process authored by Mr. Vance is currently locked. What does that mean in practice? A board member asked. The compliance auditor spoke. It means your shipping automations are locked under his licensing control. If duplicated, they trip a compliance flag and invalidate the integrity of the process. Victoria closed her binder. In light of the confirmed breach, legal recommends the immediate severance of CEO Julian Thorne and the resignation of CFO Bradley Ross. Bradley did not object, standing up and leaving immediately. Howard Gable asked for my terms. I placed my written terms on the table. Restitution of the bonus, Clause 9.3. Penalties tripled to $84,000, licensing fees retroactive to the date of breach, public correction of records, and the termination of Julian and Bradley. Howard asked if I was staying. I am not staying, I said. I built this company's backbone while Julian played golf. You let it happen and now you reap it. I gathered my folder. Once terms are met, your systems will be unlocked. Until then, they remain frozen. And one more thing, I leaned in. You have been positioning for an initial public offering. If my licensing is not resolved before the prospectus is filed, your filing will be flagged for intellectual property dispute and material operational risk. You walk, and your public offering walks with me. No one stopped me as I left. I did not burn the bridge. I turned it into a drawbridge, and I am the only one holding the lever.